Sometimes the most disturbing mysteries aren't the ones you read in novels, but the real-life nightmares that unfold in the quiet corners of our neighborhoods. Today's case is one of those, one of Seattle's oldest cold cases. It begins with a quiet couple returning from a shopping trip in 1972 and ends decades later with a DNA match and a string of horrifying revelations. This is the heartbreaking case of Jackson and Daisy Shelley. January 9, 1972, just after 10 p.m., in the 900 block of 20th Avenue, which should have been an ordinary night. Jackson and Daisy Shelley, a retired couple in their 50s, had just returned home to their Central District residence in Seattle. As they stepped inside their house, a man emerged silently from the dining room. Another article said that when Daisy was talking to detectives, she said that she and her husband had returned to their home at 7:30 p.m. to find an armed man in the dining room. Before they could react, Jackson was shot in the head. Daisy was forced to kneel over her husband's body while the intruder rifled through his pockets. Then, the armed stranger abducted Daisy in her own vehicle. He drove her to a wooded area where he raped her. But his cruelty did not stop there. He moved her again to another spot, where he struck Daisy over the head with a blunt object and left her to die. She was found by a man walking his dog. She was barely conscious and bleeding from her head. Another article said that she was able to summon help from a man living nearby. A news account at the time said a revolver was found in Jackson Shelley's pocket after the murder, but doesn't say why he was armed. Miraculously, Daisy survived. She told authorities about the brutal assault and her husband's murder, but despite her efforts, the trail went cold. Back in the 1970s, forensic science was primitive by today's standards. DNA testing was still science fiction. The police collected evidence including Daisy's clothes, but without a suspect or useful forensic tools, the investigation hit a wall. Over the years, several generations of Seattle police detectives investigated the murder, rape, and kidnapping. Daisy eventually moved to Texas to be with her children and passed away in 2007 at the age of 81. She never knew who had destroyed her life. For decades, her attacker remained anonymous until a breakthrough in 2009 would turn everything upside down. On July 15, 2005, the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab reanalyzed evidence from Daisy's rape kit. A DNA profile was extracted and stored. 4 years later, on November 5, 2009, scientists made a match. The DNA belonged to a man living in Everett, Washington, named Samuel P. Evans. The same DNA profile matched the cigarette butts found inside a home of James Keeler, the Matarana man found stabbed to death in June 1968. This man had a long and violent criminal history. Convicted of multiple crimes in Washington, Nevada, and Colorado. He had been in and out of prison most of his life. He was a registered sex offender. Because he was a registered sex offender, he was required to give a DNA sample when he moved to Washington State after recently being released from a Nevada prison. Despite his fragility and old age, by the time of his arrest, he was using a motorized scooter. Seattle detective Mike Sienski believed he was still dangerous. When Mike knocked at his door, he was greeted by an infirm man seated in a motorized scooter. In addition to complaining about a variety of ailments, the 73-year-old man insisted he had nothing to do with the murder of Jackson Shelley and the kidnapping and rape of his wife Daisy. Sienski said, "Some people will say that this guy is 73 and he had a hard time walking, but I still feel he is a dangerous man," Sienski said. After years of chasing the case, Sienski finally confronted the man and arrested him in 2010. Samuel P. Evans was born in Louisiana and was married to a passive woman in 1982. He has 3 children by 3 other women. He had served prison time in Washington, Colorado, and Nevada. The report prepared by the Nevada Department of Parole and Probation says officers considered this man, quote-unquote, institutionalized and unable to function properly within the community without resorting to violence. The report said that of 8 times the man had been released on parole before 1987, his parole was revoked 6 times by corrections authorities. According to law enforcement officials in Seattle and Nevada, much of Samuel's life had been marked by prison stints and parole violations. In July 1987, the men pled guilty to a reduced charge of attempted sexual assault with use of a deadly weapon on a victim over the age of 65 in Las Vegas. The 66-year-old victim had hired Samuel to work as a gardener. The woman said that he had tied her up after the sexual assault and stole $80 in cash, credit cards, and her 1977 Oldsmobile. He was eventually arrested in Denver, where he was behind bars for another crime, according to a pre-sentence report filed by authorities in Las Vegas. DNA from the same man was also found on a cigarette butts left at the scene of another unsolved murder, the 1968 stabbing of James Kuehler in Seattle's Mondrian neighborhood. Though the statute of limitations had expired on the rape charge 20 years, there was no such limit on murder. Prosecutors in King County were still reviewing whether to formally charge him for Jackson Shelley's killing. For 50 years, the Shelley case haunted Seattle's cold case unit. Jackson, a retired shoe repairman, had lived a quiet life. Daisy had endured unimaginable trauma, her strength keeping the story alive even after her death. The case highlighted both the slow evolution of forensic technology, the resilience of detectives who never stopped looking. DNA, once science fiction, had become the key to unlocking decades-old crimes. Even with the suspect in custody, the question remains, how many other victims were there, and could justice ever fully be served after so much time has passed? The story of Jackson and Daisy Shelley is not just about a crime, it's about the enduring human cost of violence, the process of forensic science, and the unwavering determination of those seeking justice. It reminds us that while evil may hide for a time, truth has a way of resurfacing, even after decades. If you found this story important, please share it, like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what other cases you'd like to see explored. And most importantly, remember the victims. They are more than just a name in a file. They are lives, stories, and legacies that deserve to be told. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and never stop asking questions.